gave us much information about who these people were. And they're actually two of the leading jurists of our county. And our county has had a very strong tradition over the years of just producing very good jurists, present company accepted, but just an exceptional jurist. And the reason why I say this is I think per capita we probably have more jurists who end up in the Court of Appeals than any other county in the Bay Area that I can think of, because they are well-known and exceptional people. Ollie is actually the grandson of A.F. Bray. I'm not related to Wakefield-Taylor, but I can say that for years he was the go-to person whenever a judge was inducted. He would be the you have a ceremony that you swear the oath. He was the one who was always imposing the oath, and he even though he sort of went to the DCA in I think it was 1963. He was appointed by then Earl Warren, who then became the Supreme Court Justice. He still routinely would be back here for a lot of bar events and a lot of attorney gatherings. He lived in Martinez every day. He'd walk to the waterfront and come back, rain or shine. He was doing that. He was just a prodigious walker, and A.F. Bray was I think for all intents and terms not just his best friend but his mentor. And I don't know if you wanted to say something about your granddad before I get into too much more about Wake.
Yeah, keep going with Wake.
Okay, so Wake, just to give you some idea of who he was, he came from Ukiah in 1912, and I'm thinking Ukiah is sort of a primitive place right now. I can't imagine what it was like in 1912. His stature was very tall. I think of myself as 6 feet, although my insurance people say, no, you're 5'8". But I used to think that Wakefield-Taylor had to be 6'2", 6'3", just a very imposing person.
He was 6'6".
6'6", but just a person who I don't know anyone who did not feel that he was approachable. You could come up to him and talk to him about many things. An exceptional student. He was Phi Beta Kappa at Cal. He was president of student body at Cal. He then went on to Bolt and was on the law review, which is usually the higher echelons of students. One of his proudest moments is the student body president at Cal. I don't know how many of you know what the Stanford Axe is, but it's now the trophy that's given between the winner of the Cal-Stanford game at the end of the year. In the 1930s, when he was still at Cal, there was just basic college riot about the axe. It wasn't the trophy of anything. It had been stolen originally in 1896 from Stanford because Cal won a baseball game, the best 3 out of 5 baseball game, and they said, you've been using this axe to cut blue ribbons all through this series, and we won the series. We're entitled to the axe, so they stole it. And there were various things that go along with that, but ultimately the axe every year was kept in a bank vault. And in 1933, I think it was 34, these Stanford guys dressed as press photographers came up as the axe was being transferred into an armored car to be taken to a Cal rally. They said, "Hey, can we just take a picture of the axe before you put it in the car?" I said, "Yeah." They took a picture. They had explosions. And they grabbed the axe. So it was an absolute robbery. And as I said, Wake-Taylor was the president of the student body of Cal at the time. He contacted the then president of Stanford, a fellow named Jordan. "We've got to stop this." And they made it the trophy for the winner of the football game between Cal and Stanford. Wake was a loyal Californian. I mean that I'm a loyal Californian also, but he attended Cal football games well into his 80s. Just as to give you some more personal facts, he married his wife Carmel in 1941. They forever had the feeling over the next, I think, 64 years of their life together that what good fortune we had to find each other in 1941. Just a very, very loving couple. He was an exceptional jurist also, not just because he was appointed by Earl Warren, but it was probably a different time and place, but he was then elevated. That was the Superior Court. He was elevated to the Court of Appeals by Governor Pat Brown, Democrat. He was then elevated to a presiding judge position in 1970 by Ronald Reagan. There was much more of a sense of working together between political parties back then, which I think we would all appreciate. He retired in 1982 after 31 years as a jurist. He really tried to reach consensus on the court. You know, when you're dealing with an appellate court, you're dealing with usually a 3 or 4 judge panel. Really tried to reach a consensus because he felt that concurring opinions or dissenting opinions really undermined the process they were engaged in. One of his more famous participations involved a Supreme Court jurist named McComb, who we had never had the need to remove a jurist of that stature from the Supreme Court, but this fellow was really beyond the point of help. He was aged. He was suffering from various forms of mental disabilities, and he just refused to retire. So the Commission on Judicial Performance, there's a special legislation that passed, and they recommended the Supreme Court that he be removed, and he opposed it, but he ultimately was removed. Just exceptional service in terms of his life. He was on the Judicial Council. He was the founding chair of the Center for Judicial Education and Research, which is CJUR. In California, we have an exceptional system of training judges. That was where it came from, CJUR and Bernie Whitkin. He was with regard to Cal. He was very concerned about education for all deserving students. There was a time in California when I went to Berkeley when we really were concerned about providing quality education to all of our students, and it wasn't a case of tuition. My tuition at Cal was 0, all 4 years. That isn't the way it is now, and I'm very saddened by that, because I think California profited a great deal by having all of its people capable of going through Cal or the California system. He's a charter member of the Berkeley Fellows. It's the fundraising group for Cal, the first president of the UC Berkeley Foundation. Ultimately, when he retired from the bench, he was Alumnus of the Year from Bolton '82. He received the Berkeley Citation, which is the highest honor that any Berkeley grad can receive in '81. I've already talked about many of the things that I knew about Wakefield-Taylor. Fortunately, I was around long enough to actually know him, and he swore me in as a judge. I mentioned his best friend was A.F. Bray, and used to see the two of them together. Bray was maybe 5'6", dripping wet, and you have this giant of a man, Wakefield-Taylor. I think it's highly appropriate when you take a look at the two buildings. The Wakefield-Taylor building is this gigantic precipice, and the Bray building is sort of a little bit shorter. It just seems appropriate that for eternity they're going to be remembered that way, between the tall and short. Just a couple last things about Taylor that I would say. Just an exceptional person. He was the sort of person I remember at our induction. One other person who was inducted with me when I became a judge was Bill O'Malley, who was then the DA of our county and became a judge, who, by the way, today is his birthday. He is 91 years old today, and he's doing just fine. But one of the things that I remember, I was influenced by many of the things that were told me was at Cal, and one of the famous things at Cal was a early president named Benjamin Ide Wheeler. And when I was talking about Benjamin Ide Wheeler, I was quoting part of his speech was "It's good to be here. It's good to be in this place in this time." And he came up and commented about it, that he really appreciated that recognition of the University of California and these leaders in Cal. And he also had various nicknames of things, and he looked up at our bench as it existed, like I say, present company accepted, and he says, "You've really got a good bench here." We call ourselves Superior Court judges, but that wasn't Wake's term for us. We were super judges. Because when you become a justice, you're something else. But you're super judges. You're really good here. Just a very warm, genuine, approachable person.
Great, thank you.
Good. I'll give you a few things. I had to go research some of them because I couldn't remember all the stuff he did. But well, first of all, who knows what AF stands for?
Abscom. Something like this.
Absalom. So
Absalom.
ABSALOM. It's biblical. His grandfather was from Cornwall, England, and actually fought in the Zulu War as a British officer. And then he immigrated to, I think, Pennsylvania first, and then he ended up in Butte, Montana. And so Grandpa was born, I'll call him Grandpa, was born in Butte, Montana in 1889. And he passed away at 1987, so he about 10 days before his 98th birthday, so that was pretty good. So Wakefield-Taylor lived just up the street on Lafayette, and then Grandpa lived at the corner of Highland and Grandview. So they were just sort of up on the same hill together, which is right above the jail up there. He went by the name of Frank, so A. Frank Bray Jr., or I'm sorry, A. Frank Bray. A little story there, being named Oliver, I would complain a little bit in junior high because I got picked on a little. And my dad was an A.F. Bray Jr., and he said, you could have been Absalom the Fifth, I think. So Oliver's okay, I'll stick with that. And I'm just going to call him Grandpa. So, although my grandma used to call him Johnny, and I have no idea where that came from. So, he came to California in 1904 to the Mount Tamalpais Military Academy. And I was reading his, he did some memoirs before he passed away, and I was reading over some of them, and apparently he wasn't the best student. I think he was academically, but he just he always got into trouble. So his father was a merchant in Butte and also in the state legislature in Montana for a number of years. And they decided that he might straighten out if we sent him to military school. So as a young lad, they sent him to military school, and I think he got there in 1904. So he was over in the military academy in San Rafael when the 1906 earthquake hit. So they got all the boys there, which I think he was maybe 15 or 16. I didn't do the math, but young. And they put him to work over in Golden Gate Park, managing all of the homeless people that lost their homes in the 1906 earthquake. And Grandpa was quite a horseman, so his job, what I read, was he would have to deliver messages. He would go from the Panhandle and Golden Gate Park all the way out to Fort Funston, delivering messages to all the encampments along the way. So it was kind of interesting. He got out of school there. He started he went to Cal, University of California. Let's see when he started there. I remember when he started, but he graduated. He went to Hastings Law School, and he graduated from Hastings class of 1910. Back there, the story goes, and I haven't been able to confirm this, but back in that day, when you graduated from the University of California Law School, you didn't have to take the bar exam. You're in. You're a lawyer. And so Hastings was a UC school. And so when he graduated from Hastings, he said, cool, I don't have to take the bar exam. And the Cal people said, yes, you do, because it's not University of California. What they had in mind, well, they lost that deal, so Grandpa never took the bar exam. So I would tease him about that. He was an appellate court justice without ever having taken the bar exam. I didn't seem that was very fair. Let's see, he moved to Martinez in 1912. Before that, though, he wasn't quite sure what he wanted to do out of law school. So he was working part-time as an attorney in San Francisco, and he wanted to be an actor. So he was in bit parts in community theater, and he got offered a job with what's called Velasco Stock Company as an actor. And I think he sort of did the same thing. He decided that acting didn't pay very much, so he decided to stick with the lawyering. So he came to Martinez 1912. right around there, he married my grandmother, which is probably a good idea because she was the daughter of Sheriff R.R. Veal, who was the sheriff here for, I think, 38 years.
Yeah.
I think he was the longest sitting sheriff in California, still might be. So that probably didn't hurt at all.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. He was, let's see, what did he do? Did all kinds of things. He was Courthouses District Attorney's Office, Assistant District Attorney for a number of years, City Attorney for Martinez, Pinole, Concord. He got appointed to the bench in Contra Costa by Governor Merriam in 1935. He got appointed to the First District Court of Appeal by Earl Warren in 47. And then in 59 he was appointed presiding justice by that time. He retired in 1964 from the Court of Appeal, but he never left the building. They moved his chambers, and then he sat on assignment for another 17 years until he was 90, and then he retired again. I think Chief Justice Byrd suggested that was time. I think this was after Macomb, but he didn't have the Macomb issues.
No.
But I remember that too, by the way. Then he worked part-time until he was 93, filling in on assignment and stuff like that.
One of the stories I can fill in between the two of them, they used to leave from Martinez every day by Greyhound bus.
Right.
And they'd take the Greyhound bus together and they'd be talking over their cases. When they got to the city one day, the Greyhound bus driver realizes, hey, that's my girlfriend's car. And that isn't my girlfriend driving the car. And he took the Greyhound bus and he proceeded to follow the car and ultimately trapped the car. And they called the police and they arrested the auto thief. And you can just imagine what the witness looked like, Justice A.F. Bray. No, I'll plead.
Yeah, in fact, they would take the bus together, and I'd get a call every once in a while from Richmond because the bus driver didn't want to come all the way to Martinez for two people. So I would have to drive down to the Richmond bus station and pick them up, give them a ride home. It was kind of fun. Then Bart came along, and they started taking Bart together too. But one interesting story, so Grandpa was at the Court of Appeal first, and Wakefield-Taylor followed, and the height difference. So Wake got there the first week and says, well, what do you guys do for lunch over here? Grandpa just loved to walk. And I think that's where Wake kind of got the walking thing. So Grandpa said, well, let's take a walk. Well, 6'6" versus 5'6". So I think there was 4 of Grandpa's strides for every one at Wake's. And Grandpa took him all the way over to Fisherman's Wharf and back from Golden Gate, where the Court of Appeal was. And Wake always said that almost killed him. He said he almost did not make that. Back here in Contra Costa, so Grandpa was very active in local, not so much politics, but historical society. He was one of the founding members of the Contra Costa Historical Society, the Martinez Historical Society. He was instrumental in getting the Carquinez Bridge built, both in just political influence and I think as a jurist there were some cases that came down as far as protection of the Carquinez Straits and the Delta, and based on his ruling, I'm sure there was nothing behind the scenes. The bridge got approved and built, and same with the railroad bridge here. He was Southern Pacific Railroad Bridge. He was a big part of that. One of his first clients was John Muir, so kind of puts the age thing in perspective. And he also had a big part in getting the John Muir House and Garden saved and made into a National Historical Site.
You know what kind of case the Muir case was?
The Muir case? No, I don't. Farming probably.
Yeah.
But
Muir married the richest man in Martinez. That was his wife, and that the house they're living in is actually
we weren't that progressive.
his father-in-law's house. So both of these jurists understood.
Right. That's right.
Although Carmel, I think she was just from Piedmont, but she wasn't the daughter of Veal.
No, they did okay.
Yeah.
They did okay. Back to Cal a little bit. So he was the chairman of Hastings for just a great number of years. Did anybody go to Hastings?
I did.
Okay. So the 1066 Club, he was one of the founders of that. He was president of the Alumni Association for a ton of years. And I think he went to every big game except one did that go? From like 1906 to 1982.
Oh my God.
Wow.
And I think he had the record then. I don't know if he still has the record, but he had seats underneath the box on the shade side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was smart enough to do that. We used to go to the games with him all the time and have the little parking thing. So my dad was an undergrad at Stanford, so that was always fun. So we had the red coat, and then Grandpa always had his blue coat and yellow tie, gold tie. Sorry, not yellow. Let's see. He was on all kinds of commissions while he was on the Court of Appeal. And I won't bore you with all those, but anyway, he really liked to work. He just loved it.
The one other thing that I remember about hearing about him is that in the 30s he used to have his own radio show.
Right.
And this radio show discussed famous cases. I don't know if they were just Contra Costa, but famous cases in California, and he would sort of give a narrative about these cases and what was happening.
Right.
I mean, one of the more interesting things that I saw, and I'm pretty sure it was one of the cases that he did, was just the story of Dr. John Marsh, who I don't know if you know this, but he really wasn't a doctor, but he posed as a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And when he landed in L.A., for example, he had his diploma from Harvard, and the Spanish then said or Mexicans, depending on what year it was, says, well, you can't practice medicine here unless you're a doctor. And he showed them his diploma, which was written in Latin, and had something that looked like doctor. And he says, we'll see. He says, oh, okay. But he had actually been a corpsman during the Indian Wars, and those are the sorts of stories I think that Bray would talk about, just about the California frontier, and just amazing things that happened here.
There's a radio station out of Berkeley, I think, and he did a number of years of Supreme Court case, appellate court cases that he thought were interesting. So he did this, I think, every week.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I think the historical side has some transcripts of his actual.
Yes, on their website.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, when he lived up there, I don't think they threw anything away. So after he passed away, and actually after my dad passed away, we went up and got everything, and I think we had 60 boxes or something of papers to take to the Historical Society. I think they're still sorting through them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who to hire to get them.
Yeah. Somehow we got through all that.
They have a plan.
Yeah.
So now you know a little bit more about the court people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.